6 Native American tribes, most feared by the U.S. Army. 1. Kiowa. The Kiowa were allied with the Comanche. This meant that they'd go to war anytime the Comanche did. The United States was no exception. The Kiowa were nomads, roaming the northern plains. Even among the Plains Indians, they were considered fearsome. The Kiowa undertook long-range raids all the way into Mexico. They killed anyone who dared stand in their way. Most of the Kiowa were moved to reservations in 1877, but many warrior bands remained loose on the American frontier. 2. Cheyenne. The Cheyenne were also a warrior tribe. They went to war with the Cree, Shoshone, Pawnee, Iowa, Sioux. The only tribe the Cheyenne were allied with was the Arapaho. Then white settlers arrived in the Rocky Mountains. Armed militias started raiding tribal settlements. The Cheyenne fought back, forming warrior bands. The most famous were the Dog Soldiers. It was a purely military band that fought to the death. The Dog Soldiers rallied Cheyenne and Arapaho tribesmen together. They wreaked havoc on the Colorado ranching industry. 3. Sioux. The Sioux were the most famous warrior tribe. Red Cloud, Sitting Bull, and Crazy Horse were all Sioux. At Little Big Horn, the Sioux were joined by other tribes. They ambushed General Custer's cavalry. His forces attacked a native village. Custer thought the village only housed women and children, but the Sioux surrounded his cavalry regiment. 5 companies were annihilated. It took the Wounded Knee Massacre to pacify the Sioux. 4. Apache. The Apache became a headache for the Confederacy. It was the early days of the Civil War. The Confederates couldn't commit all their forces to the front. First, they had to take on the Apaches in the West. The Apache Wars lasted for almost 40 years, but even after they were defeated, they weren't pacified. The last Apache raid occurred in 1924. Apache bands continued fighting against Mexico even longer. Only in 1933 did the last Apache warriors lay down their arms. 5. Comanche. The Comanche stopped the northward expansion of the Spanish Empire. They were the reason the Republic of Texas stopped expanding westward. The U.S. frontier actually receded because of the Comanches. The Comanche were allied with the Apache and Kiowa. They fought several wars against the Texas Rangers and the U.S. Army. However, the Comanche were mostly subdued by the mid-1800s. Their last great war chief, Santa Anna, visited Washington, D.C. When he saw how many whites there were, he advocated for peace. 6. Seminole. The Seminole call themselves the unconquered people. Indeed, they were never defeated by the United States. The U.S. Army fought 3 Seminole Wars in the 1800s. Andrew Jackson invaded Spanish Florida, pushing them farther south. The Seminoles were to be forcibly relocated to Oklahoma. They refused and went to war. Seminole leader Osceola defeated the U.S. in several battles. The government was forced to plead for peace in 1837. When Osceola arrived, they took him prisoner instead. He died in prison a few months later. The Seminoles still fought back, but they were defeated. They retreated to the Florida swampland and lived in seclusion. They never surrendered.